Hey guys, so normally I try to be really good about screen recording while I composite together my fine art pieces, but I got so excited about editing this one that I actually forgot to screen record while I was editing it. So I figured this time, instead of showing a speed edit, I'd kind of walk you through layer by layer how I put together this piece. So this is the original image that I started with. And you can see that the backdrop isn't quite covering the whole space, but I liked this angle that we managed to hit, and that you could see the three little daisies, and my legs were really visible and everything in it. So this is where I wanted to start. But I do like this backdrop. It's Box Drops by SJP's Grungy Girl backdrop. It's one of my favorites because it's kind of a nice neutral grayish blue tone and has some really interesting textures to it. So I actually pulled in, I also have her overlay set, so I went ahead and pulled in the file from her overlay set into the image. Now, instead of erasing my body out of this layer, I went ahead and just pulled it into its own layer. I kind of cut it out, and what you're seeing here is that I also color changed the green fabric to red because I knew I wanted this to be red. So from there, after adding in that red tone, the next thing I did was I took some other fabrics from other shots that I took while I was laying there, and I placed those into the scene to kind of create a dress-like effect. I knew I wanted this fabric to be spilling from my abdomen downwards, kind of like a pool or a puddle of sorts, and thus it needed to be red. So then, to give this a little bit more realism, because it feels kind of flat and floating, I created a dodge and burn layer and put some shadows underneath the fabric. Okay, the next thing I did was, you'll see right here, I add some hair. I wanted it to be a little longer and flowing looking. And then from there, I also added some more shading to the dress because, especially in this area, the light isn't hitting it quite right. My leg, because the light is coming from this direction, my leg should be casting a shadow onto the fabric in this area as well as back here, and it was just a little too bright. So I added another dodge and burn layer to really darken this down, added a little shadow from the fabric onto my leg as well. So really creating that realism of depth is what I was focusing on with that. I added another little layer of hair right here, and then another one back there. I really wanted the hair around my face so that my face would be the brightest spot of the image. Okay, so this is pretty bright and vibrant, which is not the idea that I was going for. A lot of these pieces have a bit of a more dark or matte feel. The title of this one being Loss, obviously there should be a darker finish to it. So I added a matte layer to it, and then using my curves layers, I added some more darkness to the image. And then if you look at these two curves layers, you're going to see that the black part is where the curves layer is not affecting. So basically what I'm doing is creating my own directionality of light here. You can see that it's very kind of flat in this, that the light is hitting everything evenly. I really wanted to emphasize that directionality of light, so I did that using a curves layer. I will show you what that looks like. So this curves, you can see I pulled it down so that the brighter parts were quite dark, but kept that off of my face. If I put the layer mask on, you can see exactly where it hits. But I didn't feel like that was quite enough, so I added a second curves layer to darken it down even more, and you can see again that this adds even more darkness around and kind of really concentrates that light onto just me. Alright, I almost always put some kind of a vignette. This is kind of a warm toned vignette, which is typically my preference. I added another curves layer, and this one is more of a color-based curve layer. you can see really the only line that moves is the blue. And the reason for this is because I wanted more yellows. It felt a little too blue to me, so I used the blue curves layer to add some more yellow into the image. I was apparently very into vignetting this because I created yet another vignette layer to really make the emphasis on the center of this image. And then my face was just a tiny bit too hot, so I used a layer that removes some of the light. So basically just pulls those highlights down a little bit. Lastly, I wanted to add a bit of a texture overlay to this, so I used yet another of my Box Drops by SJP overlay sets. And I didn't want it to be this yellow, so I took the saturation out of it so that it would be a gray texture, and then just erased the subject from the middle of the overlay. So that's how I put together this particular piece. You can see that it's a lot of little steps that add up to creating the finished piece, but I'm so happy with how it turned out. I wanted to create something that conveyed the idea of loss, miscarriage, adoption failure, and so for me that's what this image represents. I hope that you enjoyed this little peek into the process, and if you have questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you have suggestions for future videos, I would also love to hear those. I hope you guys have an awesome day, and I will see you soon. Bye!